You saw it yesterday afternoon. A robin on the lawn, completely still, beak wide open. Not singing. Not eating. Just standing there, mouth spread, throat moving in a strange rapid flutter you couldn't quite name. The thermometer on your porch read 94 degrees. You watched her for a moment, thought it was strange, and went back inside. Most people do exactly that. They see the open beak, file it under bird things I don't understand, and move on. The reality is that what you were watching was a bird operating at the outer edge of what her body can handle, using one of the only cooling mechanisms she has, burning through water reserves she may not be able to replace before the afternoon is over. Birds cannot sweat. They cannot drink the way mammals drink. And when the temperature in your yard climbs past 90 degrees, something begins to go wrong inside every small bird in it, for reasons that most people who feed them have never been told. Cornell lab researchers have documented that small songbirds can lose up to 5% of their body weight in water on a single hot afternoon. And backyard bird mortality during heat waves has been climbing in recent years, for reasons most homeowners are accidentally making worse without knowing it. By the end of this, you'll know what your birds are doing in the heat, and what in your yard is now working against them. Welcome back to Feather Logic. Subscribe before you leave. What you're about to learn happens in your yard every hot afternoon. And the changes you can make once you understand it are simple, fast, and in some cases the difference between a bird that survives the summer and one that doesn't. Stay until the end. The last piece of summer bird advice we cover is one almost no one questions. The data is surprising. Let's start with the bird on your lawn, because what's happening inside her is nothing like what it looks like from your window. A bird's normal body temperature runs between 104 and 109 degrees Fahrenheit. Significantly hotter than any human's resting temperature. That is what the bird's metabolism requires. The enzymes, the muscle contractions, the nervous system, all calibrated to run hot. When the air temperature climbs into the 90s, the gap between the bird's body and its environment narrows. Heat that would normally radiate outward from the bird's skin stops radiating. The bird begins to retain heat she cannot shed, and starts to overheat from the inside. With no sweat glands and no way to release heat through the skin, the bird is left with exactly two options to survive. The first is panting, opening the beak and breathing rapidly to release heat across the wet surfaces of the upper airway. You've seen dogs do this. Birds do it too, though the avian respiratory system is more efficient, the only reason panting works at this scale at all. The second option is what you saw on your lawn. Gular fluttering, vibrating the loose skin of the throat to evaporate water directly into the air. The throat moves so fast it blurs. The beak stays open. The bird holds otherwise still, conserving every calorie the cooling system allows. Both burn through the bird's limited water reserves. A robin gular fluttering for 15 minutes on your lawn is losing water she cannot easily replace, especially if the nearest water source in your yard has been sitting in full afternoon sun since 10 in the morning. When the air is dry and hot, evaporation works faster, which sounds like good news for cooling, but is actually devastating for hydration. The drier the air, the faster the water disappears from the bird system. What looks like effective cooling is also accelerated dehydration. The bird with her beak open is not resting. She is running one of the only crisis systems she has, and time is running. Your yard is full of birds at 7 in the morning. By 2 in the afternoon on a hot day, it is completely empty. The feeder is untouched. The bath is still. Most people assume the birds went elsewhere to eat. They haven't. They've gone to survive. When the temperature climbs past roughly 85 degrees, the energy math of feeding changes completely. Coming to a feeder in open sun requires the bird to fly, land on exposed surfaces, and hold position in direct sunlight while burning calories that generate additional metabolic heat. For a small songbird already operating near its thermal limit, the cost of feeding in the open at noon can exceed the benefit of the calories gained. So the birds retreat. They move into dense shade, the deep interior of evergreens, the shaded underside of decks, the canopy of mature deciduous trees. They reduce activity to nearly nothing. They sit still. They wait. This is called heat-induced inactivity, the single largest behavioral shift your yard experiences on any summer afternoon above 90 degrees. Your birds are not gone. They are 20 feet away, hidden in shade, conserving everything they have, waiting for the temperature to drop. They return at two predictable hours, early morning before the heat builds, and the final hour before sunset, when the air begins to cool. If you want to see your birds in summer, those are your two windows. Everything in between is not absence. It is survival behavior. Here is where it gets harder to look away, because this is not happening in a few yards. It is happening in most of them. A metal feeder perch in direct summer sun reaches surface temperatures wildlife rehabilitators have measured it up to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Not the air. The metal itself. At 95 degrees, that perch surface is hot enough to cause immediate tissue damage to a songbird's feet. Songbird feet have no thick insulating pads. The thin skin and tendon structure transmits heat almost immediately to underlying tissue. The bird that lands and immediately lifts off is not being skittish. It is responding to pain. Now you know what that behavior means. This is why your feeder stays quiet even after the air cools. Metal retains heat for hours after direct sun exposure has ended. The correction is straightforward. Move feeders into morning shade for summer, catching early light but covered by shadow from late morning onward. Wooden feeders absorb significantly less radiant heat than metal ones. Light-colored surfaces reflect more sun than dark ones. Both adjustments matter. These small changes shift feeder surface temperature by 20 to 30 degrees, and at those temperatures, the difference is everything for a landing bird. The bird bath is where the most well-intentioned thing in your yard turns against the birds you placed it there to support. A bird bath in full summer sun can reach internal water temperatures of 100 to 110 degrees Fahrenheit by mid-afternoon. Water at that temperature does not help a bird cool down. It accelerates dehydration. The bath has become the opposite of what you intended. There is a second risk almost no one discusses. Stagnant heated water becomes a medium for bacterial growth and contamination within hours, not days. Birds that drink from heat-degraded water can contract avian trichomoniasis, a disease documented spreading through backyard populations through contaminated standing water. The corrections are simple but require consistency. Place the bath in morning shade, covered from about 10 in the morning through afternoon. Change the water at least once a day in summer, twice on the hottest days. Keep it shallow, under 2 inches. Shallow water heats faster but cools faster when refreshed, and it reduces drowning risk for smaller birds. The single most effective upgrade is moving water, a small dripper or agitator that keeps the surface in constant motion. Moving water resists bacterial growth, stays cooler through surface evaporation, and is far more detectable to birds flying overhead than any still bath. Birds locate water by movement and sound. Still water in a still yard is invisible from above. Moving water announces itself. If you do one thing differently this summer, do this: pay attention to the hours. 11 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon. That window is when your yard hits its highest sustained heat levels of the entire day. This is when your birds are most thermally stressed, your feeders are at their hottest, and your intervention has the greatest measurable impact. Research has found that providing cool, accessible water during these hours measurably reduces physiological stress markers in local backyard bird populations. Birds forced to search far for water in peak heat lose more body weight, show impaired flight, and face higher predation risk when most compromised. The program for the worst days is simple: fill the bath in the morning, refresh at noon, refresh again at 3. 3 interventions, each under 1 minute, timed to the hours when they matter most. That is the complete summer program for your birds. Most heat stress in backyard birds is invisible. The signs don't look like emergency. They look like ordinary bird behavior, just slightly wrong. Open beak with rapid throat movement while the bird is otherwise still, that is gular fluttering, a sign of active thermal load, not rest. Wings drooping slightly from the body, angled outward, a heat-dumping posture, the bird exposing thinner skin beneath the wings to release warmth. Bathing that runs longer than usual, or repeated trips to water within minutes of each other. Normal summer drinking is brief, sustained water-seeking signals stress. Birds resting on shaded ground in unusual places, under shrubs, against building foundations, in the shadow of a potted plant on a still afternoon. A bird sitting motionless in shade on a hot afternoon has often exhausted its thermoregulation margin. It is conserving everything it has left to survive. If you see these signs and the bird appears uninjured, no wounds, no asymmetry in posture or wing carriage, leave her alone. Make sure clean, shaded water is nearby. Most heat-stressed birds recover with rest and rehydration. The intervention is keeping resources within reach, not catching the bird. I've saved this for the end because it is the one most worth getting right, the one piece of advice almost everyone repeats without questioning. Across gardening columns and social media threads, one piece of summer bird wisdom gets repeated constantly: put out ice water for the birds. The intention is good. The reasoning sounds correct. Cold water cools the bird and helps her hydrate. Except that is not what actually happens. Songbirds drink in small amounts and cannot regulate incoming fluid temperature the way mammals can. Cold water entering a small bird creates a thermal problem. Very cold water hitting the internal tissues of a small bird at high environmental temperature creates a sudden thermal differential the bird's physiology is not built to handle. In documented cases, very cold water has been linked to cold shock responses, particularly in finches and hummingbirds, where even a few sips are significant relative to body mass. What birds actually need is cool, not cold, roughly 60 to 70 degrees, the temperature of water from a shaded outdoor tap. Refreshed often. Kept clean. Moving if possible. Not dramatically cold. Just consistently available at a temperature a small bird can safely use. This is less dramatic than ice water and it doesn't feel as decisive, but it is what the birds in your yard can safely use. The gap between what feels helpful and what actually helps the bird. That is precisely the kind of gap this channel exists to close. The next time you see a robin standing still on a hot afternoon, beak open, you will know what you are looking at now. You'll know what she has access to in your yard, what she doesn't, and what changes between this afternoon and tomorrow if you act. If someone in your life feeds birds this summer, send them this. One small change in setup could matter more than they know. If you want to understand what your birds do when you stop watching, winter nights, the dark, the cold, it's all here on this channel. Tell me in the comments, have you ever seen one of these signs in your birds without knowing what you were seeing? I read every comment. Nature is talking. Learn to listen. I'll see you in the next one.